You're going to spend approximately $1,200 on your lawn this year, mowing, watering, fertilizing, reseeding the dead patches, replacing the things that burned out in August, starting the whole cycle over again in spring. $200 and somewhere around 80 hours of your time. And at the end of it, your yard will look exactly the same as it did last year, and the year before that, and the year before that. This video is about stopping that cycle permanently, not reducing it, not managing it better. Stopping it, 11 native grasses and perennials that you plant this June once, and by October you have a yard that waters itself, feeds itself, and asks you for almost nothing in return. No irrigation schedule, no fertilizer program, no weekly mowing commitment. These plants were growing on this continent before anyone invented a lawnmower, and they will outperform every high-maintenance grass variety you have ever tried without a single dollar of ongoing input from you. If you have ever stood in your yard in July holding a hose in one hand and a water bill in the other and thought, there has to be a better way to do this, this is the video you have been waiting for. Stay with me through all 11 because the last plant on this list is the one that changes how you think about your entire property. And I am not putting it first. Plant 1, little blue stem. If there is one plant that represents everything this video is about in a single stem, it is this one. Schizocerium scoparium is a native grass hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9, which covers the entire continental United States, from Minnesota winters to Texas summers to Pacific Northwest rain shadows. It was growing on American prairies before European settlers arrived, before irrigation systems existed, before anyone decided that a yard needed to look like a golf course to be considered respectable. And it grew then, through droughts that lasted years, through heat that cracked soil into plates, through winters that dropped to 20 below, without anyone watering it, feeding it, or paying attention to it at all. That is not marketing language. That is 400 years of documented botanical history. In summer it is upright, blue-green, and architectural, 3 feet tall with a presence that looks designed rather than accidental. Then September arrives, and little blue stem does something that stops people mid-sentence when they see it for the first time. It turns. Copper, burnt orange, deep burgundy, rich red, all of those colors moving through the same plant simultaneously as temperatures drop, creating a display so saturated and so warm that your yard in October looks like it is lit from inside. That color holds through November. It holds through December. In a hard winter with snow on the ground, little blue stem stands above it in full russet color, giving your yard more visual interest in January than most gardens have in June. It needs no water once established beyond what rain provides. It needs no fertilizer, ever. Rich amended soil actually makes it floppy and weak. Poor, dry, rocky, neglected soil makes it stand taller and color harder than you expected. Plant it in your worst spot. That is not settling. That is matching the plant to the conditions it was built for, and the results will prove it every single fall. Plant 2, prairie dropseed. Most people have never heard of this plant. The landscapers who have are quietly using it in every premium residential project they take on right now and not explaining to their clients exactly why it performs so reliably. Because part of the value of knowing it is that your neighbors don't. Sporobolus heterolepis is a native grass hardy in USDA zones 3 through 8, a fine-textured, arching, perfectly mounted grass that grows to about 2 feet tall and 2 feet wide, with a symmetry so precise it looks like it was shaped by hand. It wasn't. That is just what it does when you leave it alone, which is all it ever asks you to do. In late summer, it sends up delicate flower stalks covered in tiny seeds that catch light in the morning and early evening in a way that is genuinely difficult to describe to someone who hasn't seen it. Luminous is the word most gardeners eventually settle on. The seed heads are luminous. Birds descend on them from August through November, juncos and sparrows working the stalks daily, and the movement and sound that produces in a planting of prairie dropseed is something you will find yourself sitting near deliberately. It is fragrant, which almost nobody mentions. On warm, humid evenings in August, a mass planting of prairie dropseed in seed smells faintly of buttered popcorn and coriander. That is not an exaggeration. That is a documented characteristic that surprises every gardener the first time they notice it, and brings every visitor to their knees trying to figure out where the smell is coming from. It is drought tolerant to a degree that makes it suitable for the driest corners of Sunbelt yards. It is slow to establish in year 1, honest disclosure, but in year 2 it locks in, and in year 3 it is the plant your neighbors ask about every single time they walk past. Plant 3, Carl Forster, feather reed grass. This is the grass that converted an entire generation of American gardeners who had given up on ornamental planting, the ones who tried things and watched them fail and decided their soil was just too difficult, their climate too extreme, their yard too shaded or too exposed. Carl Forster is hardy in USDA zones 4 through 9, and it does something that resolves almost every difficult yard situation in a single planting. It grows in clay. It grows in wet soil, it grows in part shade, It grows in full sun. It grows in the compacted, poorly draining, nutritionally depleted soil that exists in almost every suburban yard that has had construction work done near it, which is most of them. It grows to 5 or 6 feet tall in a narrow, upright column that adds genuine vertical drama to a planting without the sprawling width that makes most tall plants difficult to sight. In June, it sends up feathery pink-tinged plumes that mature to wheat gold by midsummer and hold that color through winter without collapsing, without flopping, without requiring any staking or intervention. Cut it back to 6 inches in late February or early March. That is the one task it asks of you all year. One cut, once a year, and it comes back stronger and taller than the season before. Mass plant it in groups of 3 or 5 along a fence line, along a driveway edge, at the back of a border, and what you create is not a garden bed. It is an architectural statement that holds structure and color from June through February and costs you 45 minutes of maintenance per year. That is the math of native and well-adapted planting done correctly. 3 plants in, and if Bloom Roots is already changing the way you think about what low maintenance actually means, subscribe right now, not at the end. Right now. Because here is what I know about the gardeners who subscribe in the middle of a video. They are the ones who follow through. They are the ones who actually go to the nursery this June. They are the ones whose yards look completely different by October. Be that gardener. Hit subscribe. It takes 4 seconds. And this kind of information finds you every single week going forward. Hit it now and keep going, because Plant 4 is where the financial argument for this kind of yard becomes impossible to ignore. Plant 4, Black-Eyed Susan Goldsturm. This plant has been growing along American roadsides from Maine to New Mexico for centuries. You have driven past it 10,000 times. You have probably paid $9 for a pot of it at a garden center without realizing the same plant is naturalizing itself for free in the ditch 50 feet from the parking lot entrance. That stops today. Rudbeckia fulgida. Goldsturm is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9, and it blooms from July through October, a full 4 months of golden yellow petals radiating around a near black center, creating a color combination so vivid and so consistently photogenic that it has been documented in more American garden photography than almost any other perennial in the last 30 years. University performance trials confirm that Goldsturm specifically, not the standard species, but this cultivar, blooms longer and more prolifically under real garden conditions than any comparable Rudbeckia available to American gardeners. That is not a seed catalog claim. That is documented horticultural research from institutions that test plants under conditions that marketing departments cannot influence. It spreads 2 ways simultaneously. Underground rhizomes push outward each season, expanding the root colony quietly. Seed heads drop seeds that germinate into new plants the following spring. One plant this June becomes a spreading colony by year 3 with 0 intervention from you, and leave those seed heads standing through winter. Goldfinches and sparrows feed on them from October through February, giving your yard more bird activity in the coldest months than your neighbor's tidy, cut-back, mulched-over beds will ever produce. It needs no supplemental water once established, no fertilizer, no division for years. Plant it, and then genuinely leave it alone. That is the instruction. That is the entire care program. Plant 5, Wild Bergamot. If bee balm is the cultivated, well-behaved version of this plant, wild bergamot is what bee balm was before horticulture got involved. And for a no-maintenance, wildlife-dense, drought-resistant yard, it is categorically the better choice. Monarda fistulosa is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9, and it is one of the most ecologically productive flowering perennials native to North America. Lavender to soft purple flower heads that bloom from midsummer through late summer, each one a dense cluster of tubular individual flowers that are biologically engineered for pollinator access. Native bumblebees, honeybees, monarch butterflies, tiger swallowtails, ruby-throated hummingbirds, all of them working it simultaneously on a good July morning, creating a level of wildlife activity in your yard that most people pay for bird feeders and butterfly gardens for years trying to approximate, and Wild Bergamot delivers it for the cost of 1 June planting and nothing more afterward. The leaves are aromatic when brushed and brew into a tea that tastes like a wild, more complex version of Earl Grey. The plant is completely drought tolerant once established, having evolved on open American prairies where summer rainfall is unreliable by definition. It spreads through underground rhizomes and self-seeds freely, filling a large area within 2 to 3 seasons without any help from you. For best results, in a formal-ish border, choose mildew-resistant selections. For a naturalized area, the straight species handles itself and rewards you with a biodiversity that no cultivated variety can match. Plant 6, switchgrass Shenandoah. There are grasses on this list that perform. There is one grass on this list that performs, and then in September becomes the reason people stop their cars in front of your house. Panicum virgatum. Shenandoah is hardy in USDA zones 4 through 9, and it is the variety of switchgrass that has converted more skeptics than any other ornamental grass in American horticulture in the last decade, specifically because of what it does in fall. Through summer, it is upright, blue-green, airy, and fine-textured, 3 to 4 feet of understated elegance that pairs with almost any flowering perennial without competing for attention. Then the temperatures drop and Shenandoah turns red. Not orange, not bronze, not the ambiguous fall color that most plants produce. Red, deep, saturated, unambiguous red that intensifies as the season progresses and holds through December in most American growing zones. The airy seed heads catch morning light and evening light differently, and the combination of that red foliage and golden seed head shimmer on a clear October afternoon is one of those garden moments that you did not know you were gardening toward until it arrives, and then you understand immediately why people spend decades refining a planting. It is native to North American prairies and wetland margins, which means it manages both drought and occasional standing water with equal indifference to your concern. It needs no supplemental irrigation once established, no fertilizer. Cut it back to 6 inches in late winter, one cut, and it returns each spring more vigorous and more colorful than the season before. 6 plants in, and I want you to do something right now before plant 7. Go to the comments and tell me one thing. What is the single most frustrating maintenance task in your yard right now? The mowing, the watering, the weeding, the replacing things that died in last summer's heat. Tell me, and tell me what state you are in. I read every single comment at Bloomroots, and your answers directly shape the next video. Drop it below right now and then keep going, because plant 7 is the one that solves the specific problem that Sunbelt gardeners have been asking about since this channel launched. Plant 7, blue grama grass. From Texas to Colorado to Kansas to New Mexico, there is one grass that the land itself has been trying to tell gardeners to plant for 100 years, and most of them have been ignoring it in favor of St. Augustine and Bermuda grass that needs irrigation twice a week from May through September. Bouteloua gracilis is the native grass of the American Great Plains. It is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 10, the broadest zone range on this entire list, and it is the most drought-tolerant turfgrass alternative available to American gardeners in hot, dry climates, period, not comparatively, not with qualifications, but definitively, and without serious competition at the residential scale. It grows to 12 to 18 inches naturally and can be mowed to maintain a lawn-like appearance if you want it. But left unmowed, it develops a fine, soft, blue-green texture through summer in seed heads that curve sideways at their tips like tiny eyelashes, one of the most distinctive and delicate seed head shapes in American native horticulture. Those seed heads stand through winter, and birds work them constantly. It spreads by stolons above ground and rhizomes below, filling in bare patches and expanding coverage without any help from you. In states where summer water restrictions are tightening every single year, where the water bill for a conventional lawn runs into hundreds of dollars per month in July and August, replacing even a portion of that lawn with blue grama grass is not a gardening decision. It is a financial decision with a return that compounds every summer for as long as you own the property. Plant 8, purple coneflower. This plant has been growing wild across American prairies for thousands of years, long before anyone packaged it in a 4-inch pot and put a tag on it with a Latin name and a price sticker. Echinacea purpura is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9, and it performs in heat, in drought, in clay, in sandy soil, in the kind of neglect that kills imported ornamentals within a single season, with a consistency that makes experienced gardeners trust it in a way they trust almost nothing else. Deep rosy pink to rich purple petals reflexing backward around a raised copper-colored central cone. Bold, architectural, and genuinely beautiful in a way that looks intentional, even when it is growing in a spot you gave up on. The ecological value is staggering. Bumblebees work it from the moment flowers open. Monarch butterflies visit throughout summer. Goldfinches cling to the seed heads from October through February, extracting seeds one by one, giving your yard more bird movement in November than most conventional gardens have at their peak. It spreads through both rhizome expansion and free self-seeding, building a colony over years that you never planted and never paid for. One purchase this June, properly sited, produces $50 to $100 worth of viable divisions within 3 years. No water beyond establishment, no fertilizer, ever. Rich amended soil makes it floppy. Poor dry soil makes it bloom harder. Give it your worst ground and stand back. Plant 9, side oats grama. Most American gardeners have never heard the name. Every ecologist working on Great Plains restoration knows it as one of the most structurally important native grasses on the continent, the state grass of Texas, a plant so perfectly adapted to hot, dry, alkaline soils that it was still thriving in areas that recorded 0 significant rainfall for multiple consecutive growing seasons during documented historical droughts. Bouteloua curtipendula is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9 and produces the most unusual and visually distinctive seed head of any grass on this list. small oat-like seeds arranged in a single row along one side of arching stems that dangle and move in the lightest breeze, creating constant gentle motion in a planting, even on days when the air seems completely still. In fall, the foliage turns orange and purple simultaneously, a combination that photographs spectacularly and looks even better in person against the seed head movement. It is native to dry prairies, rocky hillsides, and the kind of alkaline, calcium-rich soil that most ornamental plants refuse outright. If your yard sits on caliche, on limestone-derived soil, on the kind of pale, hard, mineral-dense ground that has defeated every plant you have tried, side oats grama is not just an option. It is the answer. Establish it this June in warm soil with a single deep watering to start, and then walk away. That is the complete care program for the first season and every season after it. Before Plant 10, something worth saying directly to anyone who is still watching at this point in the video. You are not a casual gardener. You are someone who actually wants to change how their yard works, not just how it looks for 2 weeks in May. That is exactly what Bloomroots is built for. If this video is giving you a plan, you can actually execute this June. Subscribe right now. Hit the bell so next week's video finds you, because the gardeners who subscribe today are the ones whose yards are telling a completely different story by the time the first frost arrives. Be one of them. Subscribe now and then finish strong, because Plant 10 and 11 together are the combination that makes everything else on this list work harder. Plant 10, Rattlesnake Master. This is the plant that ends every garden tour conversation. Not because it is the most colorful thing in the yard, not because it blooms the longest, because it looks like nothing else in American horticulture, and it stops people mid-sentence every single time they encounter it without expecting it. Eryngium ucifolium is a native prairie perennial hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9 with stiff, sword-like, blue-green leaves edged in small teeth and globular, silvery white flower heads on branching stems that reach 3 to 5 feet tall from midsummer onward. It looks architectural. It looks prehistoric. It looks like a landscape designer imported it from somewhere exotic and expensive. It is native to the American prairie, and it has been growing here without anyone's help since before any of us were born. It needs no water once established, no fertilizer. Alkaline soil, sandy soil, rocky soil. The conditions that signal failure for most ornamental plants are the conditions Rattlesnake Master was built for. Native bees work the flower heads intensively. Swallowtail butterflies visit. The seed heads persist through winter in full structural integrity, holding their spherical form through frost and snow and February wind, giving your yard a sculptural presence in the coldest months that most people would pay a landscape architect several $100s to achieve and still not get quite right. It is the plant that makes first-time visitors to your yard stop and ask what it is. It is the plant that makes you feel like you know something about your own land that most people around you don't, because you do. Plant 11, Indian grass. Every plant on this list earns its place through summer. This one earns its place in September and October and November and December, and keeps earning it through every winter that follows. Sorghastrum nutans is a native grass hardy in USDA zones 4 through 9 that grows 4 to 5 feet tall with blue-green summer foliage, and then, when the season turns, produces golden yellow seed heads, so warm and so luminous in autumn light that standing near a mass planting of Indian grass on a clear October afternoon feels less like being in a yard and more like being inside a painting. The color is not subtle. It is bold, warm, saturated gold that deepens as temperatures drop and holds its intensity through late fall in most American growing zones. Combined with the red of Shenandoah switchgrass and the copper of little bluestem, Indian grass completes a fall palette that costs nothing to maintain, requires no intervention to produce, and improves with every passing year as the plants mature and the root systems deepen and the colony expands. Bobolinks, native sparrows, and juncos feed on the seed heads through winter. The standing stems provide overwintering habitat for beneficial insects, whose larval stages overwinter in hollow plant material and emerge in spring to manage the aphids and soft-bodied pests that damage your garden before you ever see the damage happening. Leaving Indian grass standing through winter is not a failure to clean up your yard. It is running a free biological pest management program while your neighbors are buying spray bottles. Cut it back to 6 inches in late February. Watch it return. Watch the color build again through September. Watch it become, over years, the reason your yard looks like a decision made by someone who understood something most people around them didn't yet. Now here is the part most gardening videos skip entirely, and it is the part that determines whether everything you plant this June actually performs or just survives. Warm soil is the entire argument for June planting. By the time June arrives, soil temperatures across most American growing zones are sitting between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit, the precise biological window where native grass and prairie perennial roots establish fastest, extend deepest, and develop the drought resilience they will need to get through their first July and August without supplemental irrigation. Plant in this window, and roots have 8 to 10 weeks to anchor before the hardest heat of summer. Miss this window. Plant in August or September. And those same roots are trying to establish in soil that is either still radiating stored heat or beginning to cool toward dormancy. Neither condition is ideal, and the plant survives, but does not build the root depth that makes it genuinely self-sufficient the following summer. June is not a suggestion. It is a biological window, and it is open right now. 3 rules that determine whether this planting succeeds or struggles, and almost no gardening content covers all 3 honestly. Rule 1. Stop amending the soil before you plant natives. This is the instinct that undermines more native plantings than drought and neglect combined. You have been told your entire gardening life to add compost, add fertilizer, improve your soil before planting. For imported ornamentals, that advice is correct. For native prairie grasses and perennials, it is the single fastest way to produce weak, floppy, root-shallow plants that underperform their potential and require the supplemental care you were trying to eliminate. Little bluestem in rich, amended soil falls open at the center and loses its upright form. Prairie drop seed in heavily composted ground grows lush and then dies back in drought stress because its roots never needed to reach deep. These plants were built for difficult soil. Difficult soil is not a problem to fix before planting them. It is the condition that makes them exceptional. Plant them in the ground you have. Rule 2, water once at planting and then exercise genuine restraint. 1 deep watering when you put each plant in the ground, long enough to settle soil around roots and provide moisture at depth. Then wait, watch. Let the plant tell you it needs water before you provide it. Most native grasses and prairie perennials planted in June soil will not need supplemental water again after the first 2 weeks, if your region receives any rainfall at all. Overwatering in the establishment phase produces shallow roots that never reach the deep moisture reserves these plants were evolved to access. Underwater slightly rather than overwater consistently, and the root systems you produce will make these plants genuinely self-sufficient within a single season. Rule 3, and this is the one most people get wrong in the first fall. Do not cut everything down in October because it looks untidy. The seed heads, standing through winter, are feeding goldfinches, juncos, and sparrows through the months when food is scarcest. The hollow stems are housing the overwintering stages of native bees and beneficial insects that your garden depends on next spring. The standing structure is protecting the crown of each plant from freeze-thaw cycles that kill far more perennials than cold alone. Leave it standing. Cut it back to 6 inches in late February or early March before new growth emerges. Your garden will be more alive, more ecologically functional, and more visually interesting through winter than any tidy, cut-back, mulched-over yard on your street, and you will do less work to get there.